So I wanted to talk to you guys about this book that I've been reading. It's called Many Lives, Many Masters, and it's written by Dr. Brian Weiss, and he's a psychiatrist. It is a true story about Dr. Brian Weiss and his patient named Catherine, who's a woman who suffers from very severe anxiety disorders and phobias, and she has been to many doctors, many therapists and other psychiatrists and people of that nature. These doctors have been unable to help her with her severe symptoms. They seem to have just been stagnant or getting worse. And so when she gets to treatment with Dr. Brian Weiss, he ends up putting her under hypnosis during one of their sessions. During the hypnosis session, she starts talking about this other life that we find out has been a life that she experienced in the past. When that first happened, Dr. Brian Weiss was like, what's going on here? What is she talking about? So he discovers along the way that she's talking about herself in another life, in another dimension. Throughout her treatment with him, each session he continues to put her under hypnosis. She begins to talk about these other lives that she's experienced. For example, in one of her lives, she passed away from drowning, and in her current life, she has a fear of water and of choking. And so when she discovered that in one of her past lives, she had this death experience, in her current life, her symptoms and her fear of water had begun to subside. When Dr. Brian Weiss discovered that she was talking about a different life and a different time, but she was talking about herself or her soul, and so she was able to, in my theory, she was able to connect to this unconsciousness, which is equated with soul, and this energy, because she was in a hypnotic state. And so she was connected to the unconscious. When you're in a hypnotic state, you're connected to, you're semi-conscious, so you're simultaneously connected to consciousness itself. And so she was able to describe her experiences through this half unconscious, half conscious connection within herself. So she was able to describe what she experienced throughout her life, but not only that, she was able to describe what happened after death. And this is the part that gets really, really, really interesting. When she wakes up, she recalls what her past life was and what happened in it. However, when she's awake, she doesn't remember what happened in between life and death, although she describes what happened, that in-between state, what Dr. Brian Weiss calls it. And it's very interesting because that's, in Buddhism, a very prominent concept, is this in-between state. And so she talks about this in-between state while she's under hypnosis, but she ceases to remember it when she has awakened. So what's very interesting about her death experiences is that they are all the same. That is one constant within these sessions of hypnosis and recollection of past lives that is experienced. When she is under hypnosis, Dr. Brian Weiss takes her through her life and then gets to her death. And at each death experience, she says, almost immediately, she says, I see the light, I see the white light. And that is how he knows she's entering this other realm, this other dimension where the master spirits lie. She calls them the master spirits. In this in-between state of her being in this other realm, she describes this all while she's under hypnosis. And so in this in-between state of her being in this other realm with the master spirits, this is after she has already passed away. And so she is recalling this in-between state of experience. And so she describes this realm, and so these master spirits is the energy that dictates if you've learned all the things that you needed to learn in your past life and are ready to move on into another life. And she explains this while she's under hypnosis. So if you have learned what you needed to learn while you're in your past life, then you're able to move on into another life. And so while this is all happening, Dr. Brian Weiss has so many questions. For example, he asks her, how will you know when they are ready? So how will you know when the master spirits are ready to have your soul move on and into another life? She says they will call to me. And she mentions that there are many souls in that dimension. There are many souls in that dimension. We're in this in-between state that she's in. And she states that she has been to many different planes at many different times, and each plane is a higher level of consciousness. She describes you get to each plane depending on how far you've progressed in your life. In order to progress, you have to learn the lessons that you were supposed to learn in that life. Dr. Brian Weiss asks Catherine, what is the lesson that you've learned in this life? This is while she was under hypnosis and recalling one of her past lives. And he says, I asked her what lessons she had to learn in order to progress. And she answered, this is crazy. She says that we must share our knowledge with other people, that we all have abilities far beyond what we use. Some of us find this out sooner than others, that you should check your vices before you come to this point. If you do not, you carry them over with you to another life. Only we can rid ourselves of bad habits that we accumulate when we are in a physical state. The masters cannot do that for us. If you choose to fight and not rid yourself, then you will carry them over into another life. And only when you decide that you are strong enough to master the external problems, then you will no longer have them in your next life. Let's just take a deep breath together. That was a lot. When she wakes up, she doesn't recall what she has said in the in-between state. She also explains while she is in that same session that I was just talking about, that we also must learn how to not just go to the people who have the same vibrations as us, but also towards those who have either higher or lower vibrations. Because if we, in my opinion and what I have learned in this life, you're very limiting yourself if you only go to those people who have the same vibrations as you, or those who are very, very similar to you is another way that you can explain it. You're very limiting yourself in your what you can learn. It's very limiting. Catherine also explains that she talks about our intuition and how we are given these intuitive powers, and that our intuition is what guides us, and we mustn't resist it. We cannot resist where our energy is and our intuition is guiding us. These are very, very similar concepts in Buddhism and Taoism. We can't go against the Tao, which is Tao means universe. We can't go against the nature of things, because if we go against our intuition, Alan Watts explains how that's going against nature itself. And so we can't do that. We cannot resist, because things aren't going to happen the way that they're supposed to. So the question is, how many lives have we had? Catherine had recalled this when she was under hypnosis, that the Master Spirits had told her that she has lived 86 times. So I was asking myself how Catherine was able to communicate what she had experienced in her past life if her soul was experiencing these things. And so since soul is not aware of itself, soul is awareness. And so since she was in this semi-conscious state under hypnosis, and thus she was able to explain what was happening through being connected to unconsciousness and consciousness itself. These souls were communicating through her, because souls cannot speak. They don't know language, they're energy. And so she was only aware of this energy because she was connected to unconsciousness and consciousness simultaneously. She was able to explain and have thoughts and describe what this unconsciousness, what her soul was experiencing, through her ability to have thoughts about it, because she was conscious at the same time. I think the most interesting thing about this is that Catherine's symptoms of her severe symptoms of anxiety, her anxiety disorders and her phobias, have subsided tremendously. So Dr. Brian Weiss states that her phobias and panic attacks had just about disappeared. She had no fear of death or dying. She was no longer afraid of losing control. Psychiatrists are now using high doses of tranquilizers and antidepressant medicines to treat people with Catherine's symptoms. So what has helped Catherine was discovering what was causing her symptoms and her fears in her current life, and what was causing them was fears that have been created in her past lives. Another very interesting thing that I will end on is that this concept of reincarnation, and how when Catherine has had her death experience, she states, while she's under hypnosis, quote unquote, she states, I'm falling into my next life. If soul is energy, and energy is neither created or destroyed, then, and she states this too, we were never really born and will never really die. Alan Watts says things like that too as well, if you're interested in listening to him as well. Well, I hope I gave you something to think about and consider, and if you have any questions, just comment, ask. I can try to answer them. Not sure if I'll have the answers, but maybe you already know the answers. So, thank you for watching, you guys. I hope you enjoyed. More content to come. Bye.